Thank you for being here today. What a great crowd on a beautiful, beautiful March afternoon. It's so great to see you all here. I'm so proud to stand with you on the right side of history today. We, as you all know, are facing a battle for our precious ways of life, fighting attacks on civil rights, modern medicine, climate, our revered public education, and so much more. It is so nice to have you all here, knowing that we have a lot of people behind us helping us with this fight. I am a huge Ted Lasso fan, and I want to say I agree with him when he said, I believe in hope, I believe in believe, and we need to have hope. So thank you for being here, and let's continue to do that. Being present today at the Story County Democrats' annual soup supper, it's in the middle of the day, so I'm not used to calling it that, is one way for us to stand together and take back our state and our country. So for anybody who doesn't know me, I am State Representative Beth Wessel-Kroeschell, and I am your MC today. Thank you. Since they asked me to MC, I thought I could make one campaign announcement for me, personally. Since the Soup Supper was moved from February to March, I decided not to do my St. Patrick's Day event this year. So my annual fundraiser will be in June, and I hope you will all stay tuned, looking for announcements and invitations to that. Everybody's invited, whether you get an invitation or not, but I just wanted to let you know I am not ignoring raising funds for the important stuff that we do. I did want to just tell you one interesting thing that happened at the Capitol. This was funnel week, so there were bills coming through just like this, barely had time to read them. And at the last minute, the House Republicans called an environmental protection meeting. The Environmental Protection Committee has not passed one bill out of committee up until Thursday. And on Thursday, they called a meeting to pass out the chemtrails bill. Do you guys all know what the chemtrails bill is? No. Republicans claim that the so-called chemtrails are toxic aerosols released from airplanes that alter weather and climate. So we are purposefully altering. In reality, they are contrails. They are the white streaks of water vapor that jets leave. But my favorite part of the story was that there was a young woman, a young mother, carrying her infant, and she was crying because her unvaccinated children have been sick for months with respiratory illness. And she said, I've been watching the skies for 4 years now, and I'm not crazy, she said. They're spraying things in our skies. I just wanted to let you know a little bit of the crazy that I work with. Again, that's the only bill that the Environmental Protection Committee passed out this session so far. So we have a great lineup of speakers. We're going to start with the minority leader for the Iowa Senate. Janice is serving in her first term, and she has taken on quite a task. She is a former diplomat with the U.S. Department of State, and she's a former member of the Iowa City Council. Janice has just taken on an incredibly challenging role as the new minority leader of the Iowa Senate. Her major success so far, and it's a pretty big one, was a successful campaign in Clinton, Jackson, and Scott County to elect Mike Zimmer as the newest member of the Senate Democratic Caucus. Here is to a lot more successful campaigns. Join me in welcoming Senate Minority Leader Janice Weiner.
Hello, Ames, and hello, Story County. Thank you so much for being willing to welcome someone from that other Regents University town. Iowa City. So my name is Janice Weiner. I represent Senate District 45, which is most of Iowa City and University Heights. And as Beth said, I am now the Democratic leader in the Iowa Senate. So, happy to be here. As Beth said, it was a really busy week, so you get my sort of odd version of a speech because we were all working on bills all week. I think Leader Conference referred to it sort of as a tube rather than a funnel, which seems a really apt description. So, my biggest success this past week was helping kill the really bad, no good, horrible homelessness bill on the Senate side. Anyway, I'm really grateful to you for having me today. I'm going to sort of give you a test run this speech that I just wrote this morning. There are all these, as you all know, there are so many different things going on in this state, in this country. I'm trying to synthesize it enough so that it comes out in a speech that's like not an hour long. But don't worry. It's been a wild few weeks under the Golden Dome in Des Moines, and equally a wild few weeks in the United States, in Washington. And as Beth said, I'm so happy you're all here. It is a fabulous crowd because we, the people, all of us, are strong. And as I said on the very first day of this legislative session, we in the legislature work for you. We are your employees in Des Moines, and our members of Congress and senators are your employees, our employees in Washington. The job of government is to work for hard-working Iowans, not for the billionaires, and that's not what's happening right now. In Iowa, yes, last November was a gut punch, but we weren't alone in the country. But on the doors, we learned that Iowans really want us to work on pocketbook issues that will make their lives better. And so that's what we as Senate Democrats have been focused on. 3 buckets. 1, opportunity. That includes the ability to earn a decent wage, to find housing that you can afford, to have quality, affordable child care and have it available, to restore workers' rights, to have top-notch public education and clean water, to name just a few. Second, freedom. Freedom can encompass a whole host of things, but at a minimum, freedom to read the books you want, for your kids to read the books that you want them to read, to marry the person you love, and freedom of bodily autonomy and health care, including abortion rights. Accountability, holding our elected officials and government accountable. The voucher scheme, for example. Next school year, all income caps will be lifted, so anyone will be able to use it. The wealthiest Iowans will be able to use the voucher scheme. Senator Kurbach can tell you exactly how far behind we are in terms of inflation in funding our public schools. And that's where we should be focused, because we can't really afford 2 separate school systems in this state. Over 490,000 Iowans attend our public schools. And in terms of accountability, yeah, including my granddaughter who's sitting right over there and isn't going to want me to call her out wherever she went. Auditor Sand, obviously, who was elected statewide, is not being allowed to audit the voucher program. It's time that we held Republicans accountable. You heard about Funnel Week, and I'm sure you heard about the horrible rollback of the Iowa Civil Rights Act. That is actually the only thing Republicans have passed and which has been signed into law so far this legislative session. The right to discriminate in housing, employment, and credit. Excuse me, I don't think that's what we were elected to do. So that's Des Moines in a nutshell right now. I have a ton more I could say, but I won't. But let me tell you how, from my perspective right now, Des Moines and what's going on in Washington are connected for Iowans. So you know that tariff roller coaster? It is impacting our state, in addition to all the job cuts that are coming out of Washington. I said on the Senate floor last week that we've gone from first quarter 2.5% projected growth in this country to 2.8% projected negative growth. And here's a starter list of what the on-again, off-again tariffs mean to Iowans. 1, 30% of Iowa's trade is with Canada, 30%. We exported, it's our largest trading partner, we exported $5 billion in goods last year. Canada is followed only by Mexico, $3.2 billion in goods last year. Agriculture in Iowa depends on exports. We are the country's second largest agricultural exporting state. And in part, our ag economy depends on fertilizer. That 80% of the potash to make fertilizer comes from Canada. A big chunk of our aluminum to make all sorts of things, including ag implements, things for houses, comes from Canada. Cars. We have cross-border integrated manufacturing of cars. During my foreign service career, I served in Toronto for several years, and I got to see it. It's a really amazing parts and cars cross the border a number of times before they're finished. It will hurt the big three, it will hurt workers, and it will drive up car prices. Tariffs on lumber raise the price of housing, and heaven knows we need more affordable housing in this state. Tariffs on Mexico will raise the price of groceries and gasoline. Also for gasoline, Canada, because of the oil sands. And last Monday, the president tweeted, quote, "To the great farmers of the United States, get ready to start making a lot of agricultural product to be sold inside the United States. Tariffs will go on external product on April 2nd. Have fun," end quote. Personally, I don't call any of that fun. And I don't think, and I personally think that making enemies of one of the best neighbors we could have is just plain stupid. It won't help farmers. It won't help the ag economy. It won't help manufacturing. It won't help homeowners. It won't help Iowans. So how do we start to hold those in power accountable, and how do we ensure there are actual consequences? Because I think one of the reasons we see that we're in the minority in both the Senate and the House is because for one reason or another, there haven't been consequences. At least our elected officials here in Iowa have not seen those consequences. So I believe that we need better media, different media, and new influencers, and that's why I'm so excited about your keynote speaker here today. We also need the resources to get the word out across the state at this time, and we Senate Democrats will go where the people are and listen. You'll see me leave here pretty soon after the speech because I'm going to go to Ankeny for a listening post, because we are starting to do listening posts where people want us to come, and also in seats that are flippable in 2026. Because what really matters is where we go and with whom we talk and to whom we listen when we are not in Des Moines. You heard briefly about the state Senate race in Senate District 35 over in Clinton, Jackson, and Scott counties. What did we do that worked? Well, I'll admit it helped that it was really cold and it was a special election, but we did the work. We had a really top-notch candidate who was already pretty well known in the district. We talked to people where they were. We valued them. And Mike Zimmer, who won it, really spoke about Iowa values and schools and pocketbook issues. And we got out the vote and we won against a really right-wing Trumper in a Trump plus 21 district. And I'll tell you, when we started down that road, some people in my talk said we shouldn't spend any money, we shouldn't bother, it's not going to happen. I said, well, we have to try. And one of the other benefits of that race is we energized county parties. Scott County stepped up, Jackson County stepped up, Jones County stepped up to help Jackson County, Clinton County stepped up. And you know what, now that there's another special election down in Lee County in House District 100 this coming Tuesday, guess who's showing up to knock doors? People from Scott County, people from Clinton County, whole crews from Johnson County, and others, because we did it once and we can do it again. And I really hope that next Tuesday we'll get Nanette Griffin elected to the House. Because she too is a superb candidate and a really good fit for that district. So the extreme disruption in Washington and here in Iowa, I think offer us an opportunity to listen to Iowans, to gather stories, to be present in our communities and to do some good work and to rebuild the brand of this party. I believe that that fight begins with figuring out how to retool how and from whom Iowans get their information. Because I really worry about all the disinformation that way too many Iowans hear daily. If I had the money, frankly, I'd buy a chain of AM radio stations and build out that platform for us. But in the absence of that, we have to start to be present on those AM radio stations that exist. We have to be present with the influencers and on the podcasts, and we must be the truth tellers. I believe that information and facts, not crypto, are the most important currencies of our time. Information and facts. It also means speaking in a language that people can hear and understand, respecting them, and saying things not just once, but multiple times. And it means really listening. We need to find new platforms and expand our reach. We need to show Iowans that what Democrats stand for by living those values in our communities. We need to knock doors, including this year in an off year, and we need to build and take care of our communities. Too many people simply don't realize that they need government. And right now, our government, especially at the national level, is being destroyed. Our national security is at risk. We are not safer. Costs are not lower. People are not better off. Eggs are not cheaper. Gas is not cheaper. And for those who care, the stock market is not higher. I mean, I also look at this through the eyes of what we teach our kids. We teach them to play nicely, to ask permission, to share, to hold the door for a friend. We teach them that bullying is bad and unacceptable, to listen to others, to follow the rules, and to say please and thank you. I don't think we saw that in the Oval Office a week ago. We have to set an example. Our government should be setting an example, but it's not. So this is a time to show up, like all of you have shown up today, to not obey in advance, and to muster all the courage that each of us can individually. Way too many are trying to dismantle the truth with lies and disinformation. They repeat them over and over, and that's why we must as well, on the truth side. Watch, for example, how they try and take down science over and over. You just talked about chemtrails, Beth. Maybe that'll help us push back on the bad Bayer bill, who knows. But we do not need to make measles or polio great again. We have cemeteries that bear witness to what that meant until the 1960s. But science is apparently inconvenient for would-be autocrats because scientists go their own way. They follow the scientific method. They discover new things and apply them. So standing up for science is also standing up for our kids and our future. And while I'm at it, diversity, equity, and inclusion are American values. They are Iowa values. We don't need to go back to the days of Jim Crow. And we don't erase history as is happening with university websites being scrubbed right now. Democracy is at risk. Like it or not, it's up to us. And I believe we're up for the challenge. As Michigan Senator Alyssa Slotkin said the other evening, don't tune out, it's too important. Hold elected officials accountable, including those of us who are here, and pick one issue, at least one issue that you will focus on. I'm watching as many of our international friends and allies, or in some cases maybe former allies, are being truth tellers right now on the international stage. Our power right now lies right here with each of us. In my 26 years as a U.S. diplomat, one of the first things I watched was people under threat in East Germany from the secret police, the Stasi goons. They built their trusted networks, and they found their strength, and they pushed down the Berlin Wall. And now it is our turn to build our currency of strength, empathy, organizing, and truth for Iowans and Americans. I'm not usually a huge Bernie Sanders fan, but I have huge respect for him right now. And we need more Bernies out there traveling to states red and blue and holding rallies. Telling people that we are stronger and better than the billionaires, that there are more of us than there are of them. Speaking about we the people. Yesterday, I think it was just yesterday, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, 4,000 people came out to hear Bernie speak, and they recited together in unison the closing words of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Thank you all, and let's go!
Thank you so much, Senator Weiner. We appreciate your words and kind of the summary of what's going on, crazy as it is. I wish that my phone was big enough to big today because I have a little announcement to make. My granddaughter just rolled over for the first time. Oh. You know, first-time grandma, so anybody who wants to see a picture, go ahead and ask me. I got a phone full of them, so. The one thing about that is, you know, stay involved, stay in tune, but also find something that brings you joy in life and don't end up in the hospital as my sister did a couple of nights ago. Make sure you take care of yourself when you're staying engaged and staying involved, because it can. And my granddaughter is my piece. That's what I do. Susie Petra, are you going to come up and give us a little heads up on what you're working on? Susie is one of my most prolific email writers. I get an email from her on a regular basis, either informing me about something or asking me to vote in a certain way. She's a former school teacher, and she's come up to make an announcement.
Oh boy, if you know me, you know I'm never at a loss for words. Once the pride of Iowa, Iowa's public schools have been facing decades of attacks, decades of underfunding, and thanks to Governor Reynolds and her Republican legislators, they have involved the state of Iowa in the private voucher scheme. We know that vouchers are budget busters. It's clear that vouchers are being funded by bleeding public education. Vouchers are the centerpiece for undermining confidence in our public schools. Vouchers in Cedar Rapids School District lost in excess of $850,000 for the public school district. The Johnson Community School District this past year lost approximately $1.1 million in state funding thanks to vouchers. I'm still waiting to hear from our Story County school districts to see how much we've all lost. In Arizona, it's predicted that the voucher system will bankrupt their state. And that's no surprise, because here in Iowa last year, vouchers cost the state of Iowa $129 million. That's $22 million over the projected cost. This year, vouchers are estimated to cost the state $218 million, that's almost twice. $38 million over their estimated cost. Next year, when the income cap comes off for the wealthy, and we taxpayers get to fund the private religious schooling for the wealthy's children, well, the vouchers will cost the state about $315 million. That's what's being underfunded to our public schools. And finally, we know that vouchers have never been about education. They are really about getting rid of public education and about privatizing education. You'll notice a number of us wearing shirts that say, "Public School Strong." I'd like to talk to you about it just momentarily, because we've asked a lot of you to sign petitions. There are a lot of you we've missed, but a little about Public School Strong. It's a national organizing movement started in North Carolina, made up of parents, educators, students, community members, school board members, grandparents. And it's organized because we love our public schools. And we're working statewide here in Iowa with the help of Iowa CCI to build coordinated momentum across Iowa, to take action to defend and to strengthen our public schools, and to garner support from Iowans for our public education system. We are working with school boards across the state to support equitable, fully funded public schools and phasing out of the governor's voucher system. Yes. Bruce, if you'd stand up, Judy, they have the shirts on. Please, if you haven't signed the petitions, please see one of us before you leave. Grab us, because we really, really would like you to sign on to this. And by the way, people are fighting back. There are referendums that have been recent in vouchers, for vouchers I should say, or against vouchers. In Colorado, vouchers lost. In Nebraska, conservative Nebraska, 57% of the people who voted rejected vouchers. 57% in Nebraska. And in Kentucky, not a real hotbed of progressivism, 65% rejected vouchers. Vouchers lost because people appreciate and love the public school system. So, even in Illinois, by the way, they rescinded their voucher system. Thank God. So we need lots of signatures. We are working with school boards to pressure them, to pressure our legislature. So remember, it takes all of us. So please sign this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie, for your strong support of public schools and a whole bunch of other issues. She is not limited to public schools, trust me on this. We hear from her a lot. A few people I didn't recognize, and I should have recognized earlier. We have a couple of former candidates who are here. I hope they're still here. Mike Look, are you still here, who ran for the Iowa Senate, right there in the back. Ryan Melton ran against Randy Steenstra. Is Ryan still here? Oh, there he is, right down there. And we are going to hear from the new mayor of Nevada, Mayor Ryan Condon. Oh, there you are, right in front of me.
I'm not going to speak long because I want to hear what Al has to say. So, I don't have a prepared speech. What I want to do first is thank Barb Wheelock and Maddie for all of your help getting me elected, because I did nothing. When I had previously run for the 51st, and I had never planned to run for politics ever, but I'm a complainer, as anybody that knows me will tell you. And my wife, she's a saint, and she had to listen to it all the time. And one morning we're having our coffee, and I'm at it, and she very soberly says, "Ryan, do something or shut up." She did not intend for me to do something. So I went to the local DEM meeting, met Ryan Melton, who inspired me, and I ran for 51st. Then I got beat by 13 points. That was hard, and I did not intend on running for anything again. And a special election was called, and no one was stepping up. So I decided people deserve a choice. And I decided I'd go out, get the signatures, and run for mayor. Formally vacated by Brett Barker, who beat me. So thank you, Brett. It took courage and steadfastness and a willingness to get back out there to do this. But we were successful, and I appreciate everybody in this room that had anything to do with it. Marilyn for being my rock and telling me not to just pack up our house and leave the country. My son tells me we live in the worst timeline, and I believe him. Everything that could possibly go wrong is going wrong. But that said, this room gives me hope. I would never have imagined this kind of turnout. I was here last summer and it wasn't even half of this. So thank you guys, everybody, for coming. The last thing that I'm going to say is the strongest weapon that we have, the only thing that we have right now, because we're outnumbered in the legislature, we don't have the governorship, we don't have anything right now really. Courage. Courage is the tool that we need. We need to use that courage. We need to self-sacrifice. We need to donate. We need to spend time on the phones, postcard writing, doing whatever we can do at whatever level that we can, because we're going to turn little victories like winning in a town like Nevada to bigger victories. And it's people like you that are going to do it. Thank you.
Okay, now we are on to our featured speaker, our keynote address, and we have two for the price of one, right? I know we are all frustrated, especially with local media. We're frustrated with media. As a politician, it is so frustrating to get your message out there, either during campaign time or during the legislature, about what's going on, how to get involved, and who I am, so why should you vote for me? I haven't been covered in an election in I don't know how many years, and certainly I rarely get covered locally. Well, I don't think I have been covered locally in terms of legislative work, except for occasionally, maybe once a year I get on KHOI. So who do we believe? What are our sources? I'm so excited to have Al Weber and Charlie Weaver here. Al was president of the Ames Tribune a few years ago. He's also been a leader in Ames with the Ames Chamber of Commerce, the United Way, New Rotary, and Story County Conservation. Charlie works for the Minnesota Daily. I took these notes down by hand, it's hard to read. And he is a former employee for the Iowa State Daily, a graduate of Greenlee School of Journalism. Help me welcome both Al Weber and Charlie Weaver here to talk about their new project. Oh, okay. It comes off.
Good afternoon. It's a great honor to be here with all of you in a room with such passionate people. I can promise you that what we're about to share with you has been created by a group of equally passionate people, and I can assure you that Senator Weiner's comments were right on with what we're trying to do with this. There's a lot of truth in what we're trying to do. There's a lot of fact-based reporting that we're trying to do, and there's a lot of values that have been put into what we're trying to do. And we're here to give you an update of what we're doing, where we're going, and where we need help. There's a lot of people in this room that have had a hand in this, and I'll be looking forward to introducing them here in just a minute. So thank you for having us. Beth, thank you for the introduction. I'll give you a little bit more. I've been at Ames since 1990. My wife Barb and I moved here to work with a couple of stalwarts in the journalism field, Michael Gartner and David Bellin and Gary Gerlach, who at that time bought the Tribune from another stalwart from Ames, Verl Bergeson. Verl had a huge hand in my lift up into the journalism world, but Gary and Michael certainly helped me a great deal. My two children, I have two daughters, they're now older. My older daughter is in Minneapolis, and my younger daughter is here in Ames. She works at Child Serve as a behavioral specialist. This is the only home they've known. And we have committed a lot of time to a lot of different efforts, including my wife Barb. She's been very active in the school systems. I've been active in almost a lot of different things. That list could go on, but what Beth gave you was a real good highlight. So I'm very happy to be here. But I'm joined by a couple of people that are going to join me in this presentation. And before I recognize the other folks, I'd like to recognize Charlie Weaver, and I'll let Charlie tell you a little bit more about himself.
Yeah, as it was stated, I am the executive director and co-publisher of the Minnesota Daily, the student newspaper at the University of Twin Cities campus. But I've spent the last 20 years of my career in student media. And when I was kind of hooked into this project, I realized that there were a lot of things that I do in student media that were going to be very relevant to kind of setting up Ames Voice and getting the community behind it. Over the last year and a half now, we've been working very specifically toward that goal. And along the road, I also ended up working on 3 other projects up in Minneapolis with Woodbury, Prior Lake, and Eden Prairie, have all launched independent nonprofit newsrooms. And so there's a burgeoning cohort of these types of operations that are starting to pop up, not only in the dual state area, but across the country. And so we're really excited to kind of talk to you about our concept.
And the other person I'd like to introduce is Doug. Doug does more than turn pages. Doug Burns is the former publisher and owner of the Carroll Daily Times-Herald. And Doug has been active in our fundraising efforts and has been a good help for getting this off the ground. So if you could kid us to the next slide, Doug, that would be great. And one more, we'll do one more. We'll try to do this as deliberately as we can. This is going to be a little more informal than I think you'd normally see in a keynote address, but we're going to follow a very simple model. This is a journalism model. Who, what, where, why, when, and how. And we'll go through each of these in greater detail. We'll be happy to answer questions at the end. We'll certainly give you our email addresses if anybody wants to ask questions of us in greater detail. I'll stick around. I'll meet with anybody. I know Charlie will do that. I know Doug will do that. And there are a few others in the room that will also be able to do that. So go ahead and click to the next slide, Doug. Thank you. So go to the next one. Again, this is where we're going to recognize some of the people that actually got this started. There are other people that were involved in this for a longer period of time. And these are the folks that really planted the seeds and deserve a lot of credit for getting the momentum of this going. Charlie and I kind of joined midstream. Doug was into it a little bit before us, but there's a whole bunch of people that have been talking about this and trying to figure out how to do it, and we're just now starting to get to a place where it's not if this is going to take off, it's really now more a matter of when. There's still lots of work to be done, and we'll be asking for your help, but it really, I do think, will happen at this point in time. You'll see a lot of folks up here that you probably recognize, and I'd like to recognize Carolyn Klaus first, because Carolyn was one of the first people. You all know Carolyn, right? Carolyn was one of the first people that actually started gathering a group of people together to talk about this. And Ann Campbell also is here. I know Ann was in the very early stages of this. So, thank you. And I know the Flores, Jan and Cornelia, are here as well. So they were in the very beginning of this as well. And I'm not sure if I'm missing somebody else. I don't know if there's anybody out there. But you can see a lot of faces of people that you know. Lynn Carey was one of the first folks that was in the middle of this at the very, very beginning. In fact, some of our very early meetings are all done at KHOI. So there's been a lot of work going on for a good long while from some very, very passionate community volunteers, and they deserve a whole lot of credit for getting us going. So if you could go to the next slide, Doug, thank you. Really, we're going to talk about what we're trying to do, and there's 3 parts to this. What we're really trying to do is create a better media outlet for Ames. A lot of it will be based on community. I think, to me, it's more a matter of community that I'm concerned about. I worry and fear by the demise of corporate journalism in general, but also in Ames. You see it by the Tribune and the constraints that are being placed upon some very, very hardworking people to do what they want to do and what they should do. We've talked to Brandon Hurley a number of times. Brandon is one of the hardest working people you'll ever meet. And there's some really fine writers that are there, but they are constricted by corporate journalism. And it's just a sad, sad state of affairs, in my opinion, especially when you look back to what we were trying to do in the good days of the Tribune. I call them the good old days. But same thing with radio. KSI has suffered the same fate. You know a lot of the names of the people that were very passionate and working with Betty when she was building her radio station, but corporate journalism has just decimated radio stations and newspapers across the country. So we have a little bit of a history. A lot of the discussions started early into 22. We started doing a little bit more work in 23, and then in the summer of 23, there were a lot more monthly meetings. If you can go to the next slide, Doug. I don't have this all memorized, so I have to kind of read it along with you. But in 2024, we developed a work group that started doing more of a business planning process. There was some modeling going on. There were a number of us that went and talked to people in Columbia, Missouri. Charlie and I and Anthony Capps, another person that's been working on this, met with some people in Nebraska. And much of our modeling of our work and our business model was picked up in Nebraska. There's, like Charlie said, a lot of this activity going on. And when we first started doing this, we thought we were on to something new. But the more we started digging into it, the more we realized that now there are over 450 enterprises, much like this one, across the country. And you're seeing a lot more support groups developing and organizations and associations that are being designed to support this activity. There's foundations being developed to help this kind of activity. And so there's a lot of momentum going. Iowa, ironically enough, doesn't have one. This would be one of the first in our state that would be a non-profit formed media company. All of that work started in February and in April. We did a SWOT analysis. We formed our entity last summer. Doug started doing fundraising for us. You could go to the next slide, Doug. Our entity, I can't see all of that, but we started really making progress last summer and into the latter part of last year. We were then approved last year. Our 501c3 status was approved, so we can be a tax-free donation for any of you that are interested. You can go to the next slide, Doug. This is definitely going to be a publicly owned media outlet. It was designed to be a public service sort of environment, and we've got many missions. We have a mission statement, we have a vision statement, and we can share more about that here in a minute. Go ahead to the next slide, Doug. Our mission is really focused on being a community-centric media outlet. We have to resist the term newspaper because newspapers are restricted in some ways because they have to print a product and there are delivery constraints. We have the beauty of not having those constraints. We don't have to have constraints on content. And you all, I'm sure, get newsletters from other news sources, and they have all sorts of their content stored for you to refer to. We're going to have that same opportunity, but we're focused primarily on Ames. And as you can probably not see, but I'll read this to you, we want to be a leading and trusted source of news and information. And we want to foster well-informed and engaged communities. And the reason I say communities is because we're starting in Ames but we know that this possibility exists far beyond the boundaries of Ames and Story County. There are opportunities in other places for this kind of business model. So go to the next slide, Doug, thank you. Some of the same values that we've heard just a little bit ago about truth and trustworthiness and transparency, freedom of expression, innovation, and above all, community ownership. One of the critical aspects of this is getting community buy-in and community involvement. And so part of what we're trying to develop in the future will be community outreach and things like we've seen in other places across the Midwest that are successful. If you could go to the next slide, Doug, thank you. Currently, there are going to be two components to it. There will be a newsletter, much like what you probably get. You probably subscribe to maybe the Register or the Tribune, and you get a newsletter that will invite you to look for more. But it's all going to be based upon a website, and the website is going to be called the Ames Voice. The organization is structured in a way that we have a nonprofit entity that can fundraise, and that is called Mid-Iowa Community News, and it will then fund products. The first product that we're going to be funding is the Ames Voice, and that central feature of that is going to be the website. Go ahead, Doug, thank you. This is a look at it, and I'm going to turn this over to Charlie because he's the technical person behind this.
So Ames Voice website, or amesvoice.com, is in the prototype stages right now. It is live on the internet. You can kind of go look at it. There's a lot of lorem ipsum, placeholder photos, different things like that. But we discovered during this process that there's a little bit of show, not just tell, that we need to be kind of putting out into the community. But yes, like we mentioned before, it's going to be a paywall-free website forever. We'll be talking about our monetization and revenue model a little bit later. But the thing that's going to get you to the website, if you could advance the next slide, is a newsletter. And it is a free, we've been kind of struggling over how to describe it because we want to get subscribers, but when we talk to certain groups of people, they ask us, well, you said that we wouldn't have to pay for it. Subscribers just mean readers. It will be completely free, just like the website. And we plan on starting it weekly to start, and hopefully as momentum ramps up, frequency will also ramp up. It's going to be created on the Beehive platform, which also offers a lot of robust sharing tools. So if you receive it yourself, you can pass it along, encourage other people to participate in it. We're really kind of leaning into the local engagement to help us get the subscriber levels up to where we need to be able to kind of monetize regular advertising channels and other products that we end up building out. Ready for the next slide. This would be kind of an example of what you would get if you've subscribed to like the Iowa Writers Collaborative or something like that. It's very similar to those types of products. They won't have the entire stories listed in the newsletter. The newsletter you can consider as your front page to the Ames Voice. The rest of the sections are on the website, which it'll take you to. And now, I don't know if this is you or me. Where?
Both of us.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doug. To the next slide, Doug. I can take this one. The whole idea behind it is obviously to focus on local news. And what we're defining right now, initially at least, is the local area that we're going to try to cover and focus on is Ames. And our hope is that this will evolve and grow. We've used a number of different metaphors or analogies in trying to describe what we're doing. And the best one from my perspective, especially with some lovely granddaughter, I think that we had, is that we're sort of a toddler in a lot of ways. We're going to crawl for a while. And we're going to, when we introduce this, we just talked about this yesterday, we will introduce our first newsletter with a news item, a letter from the organizing folks. And in that letter, we're going to ask for grace because there is going to be some stumbles along the way. We're not going to be perfect, but we're going to try like holy hell to do the best possible job that we can to gain trust and to gain credibility, which ultimately and hopefully will then lead to more contributions, more donor activity, which then allows us to hire more staff. The beauty of a nonprofit organization like this, and Charlie will talk about that here in a little bit, is all of the money will be mostly devoted to staff development and staff growth. So the more we are able to raise funds for this, we then can dedicate more staff to more reporting, and it's going to be this lovely thing. So we're going to stumble a little bit, we're going to crawl for a while, we'll toddle for a while, and then we'll start to walk, and hopefully not too long down the road we'll be running a little bit faster. This is all going to be done remotely, at least at the start. We do hope to find ways to get an office, probably not too far into the future. We're not exactly sure how to make that work yet, but I still have this kind of vision in my head that there is full circle involved. I talked with Chris Nelson, the family that owns the Tribune building, and I asked him if he'd ever considered giving us a free office on the second floor once they get that going. So you see Chris or Jerry, tell them I'm planting our seed, please. Next slide, Doug. The question that we're often asked is when, and this has been going on a lot longer than I think anybody had hoped. I'm sure that when Carolyn and Ann and the Floras and others and Lynn started this, I don't think they ever thought that it would take this long to get something done. But you know, we want to do it right. We want to make sure we're following the best practices that we can possibly borrow. So our hope is to get this launched yet in the second quarter. We thought maybe we could get it done yet this month in the first quarter, but there's a lot more activity going on now in the administrative side and some of the process work that takes a little bit of time to do it right. So there's always the question of why. When we first developed this slide presentation, I started it by suggesting that Simon Sinek has it right. You have to begin with the why. And you know, you can talk a lot about the connection between democracy and the fall or the decline of journalism, but the great crime in my view is again the loss of community that happens when a local newspaper or a local radio station dies. And there are these lovely things out there that you're probably hearing about called media deserts or journalism deserts. And there are scary, scary stories that come. You can find them online all over the place. But one of the great reasons for doing this is because somebody has to stand up and say there's a better way to do it. And there's a lot of momentum coming, and there's a lot of people trying this stuff. And there's some really wonderful models out there that you should explore and look at. I think there's some slide, if you can go to the next slide, Doug, I think there's some, yeah, here are some wonderful ones that are already being developed. Yeah, I would say Daily, believe it or not, is a nonprofit enterprise.
Has been for quite some time.
Charlie's Minnesota Daily is a nonprofit. But you probably didn't know that the Salt Lake Tribune, which has been a family-owned newspaper for well over 120 years, I think it's been 6 or 7 years ago now, formed a nonprofit and turned the entire newspaper enterprise into a nonprofit. And I'll share a little secret with you. When Gary Gerlach and Michael Gartner and David Bellin were talking about the next evolution of the Tribune, some of you probably remember, I know Annette Forbes remembers this well, there was a battle going on between the Tribune and the Daily at Iowa State. And I got in the middle of that, and it was not a whole lot of fun. I learned a hell of a lot. But when we started talking about, well, how do we make the best of it? We actually did talk about making the Tribune a nonprofit. And this was a long time ago. And it was going to be designed as a learning laboratory for students. And unfortunately, David Bellin passed away, and the whole thing kind of changed. But a lot of the seeds of what you see here and what we're doing fits that model. There's a great opportunity to make this a learning laboratory, and we hope that we can do that. So, next slide, Doug, please.
And then one of the bigger things that we want to talk about to kind of hammer this point home is our goal is community stewardship. We want to leave the communities that we enter better than we find them. And we want to create relevant, engaging sources of local news and information. As Senator Weiner was talking about, that's our currency. And I will add one more piece of currency, credibility. You know, a lot of communities in these news deserts have been relegated to searching out Facebook pages. I know Ames has a Facebook page or two. And the Nextdoor app, different things like that. Those aren't credible places to get good, solid news and information. And to also pull from Senator Weiner's discussion, I get a little bristly when we call what we do media. Media is music, it's photographs, it's television, We do journalism. And specifically to Senator Weiner's point, journalism is just a written form of the scientific method. We have a thesis or a theory or a story idea. We have to go out and report it. We have to find the facts. We have to find the documents and the quotes and the things to support that thesis. If that thesis is correct, we write the story, but if the thesis is incorrect, we still write the story. So the more informed we can make communities, the better we're going to lead them. And to Al's point, like, I think you can draw a direct line to the hyperpolarization in this country, to the decline of local news. It's really easy to yell. It's really easy to kind of get angry and yell at national broadcasters and people that don't live in our communities and work with us and eat with us and drink with us, but so the other kind of bullet points that we're trying to hit on here is to provide an environment for respectful discussion and intelligent debate. I know that sounds like an oxymoron today, but like, I think the more work we do in this space, the lower the temperature is going to get, the more conversations we can have with people. So, because ultimately at the end of the day, we want to really bring the Fourth Estate back to local communities. Like, we need to be the watchdog of the people that are in power, regardless of political affiliation. I mean, good things and bad things happen in both parties. I mean, it's a little imbalanced at the moment, but we're working on that. And then we also want to act as a conduit that brings the city and the campus communities closer together. I lived in Ames for 14 years. Well, I went to school and then became a professional at the Iowa State Daily. That was always like a big goal, but it always seemed like, I mean, granted, with the turbulence between the Ames Tribune and the Iowa State Daily kind of kept that from happening. But, you know, you have community, or university communities throughout the nation that have a much closer relationship than kind of Ames does right now. And I think that can only be enhanced by, you know, bringing the faculty, the staff, the students, and the city folks into kind of the same information ecosystem. And we want to set an innovative open source model for other local news organizations to follow. Kind of pinning back to Al's point, you know, there are a lot of, and we were talking to Bill Monroe, former director of the Iowa Newspaper Association, Iowa Newspaper Foundation, yesterday, and he brought up the point that, you know, there are a lot of family-owned newspapers that don't have a succession plan in place, still in the state of Iowa and Minnesota and all across the country. If we can get this model kind of pinned down and open source it, we can offer communities a resource to buy their community newspaper if it's closing, or help their radio station or television station or whatnot, and really kind of go after a different set of rules when it comes to the Fourth Estate. And that all becomes community ownership and engagement, because I believe if the community really truly believes that they own their local newspaper, they're going to participate in it more effectively and passionately. So, but this whole plan isn't going to work without your help.
I can take it from
Yep.
here, and we don't have a little handy little basket to pass around, but we'd be happy to do that if y'all want to get those 20s back out. But there's work to be done. So go to the next slide, Doug. Thank you very much. It's all going to come down to money and people, and we've been fortunate in a way, and I can give you an update on each of these. We have a fundraising activity that has been going on for some time. Doug and I have made a lot of calls. Doug has made a lot of calls on his own, and we want to get our first year budget in the bank before we launch, because we believe that's the right thing to do. And you know, you talk about values and you talk about what's the right thing to do. I learned that from my parents. I'm guessing all of you have the same experience. Just do the right thing. And so the right thing here for us to do is to get the money in the bank before we engage our employees, because they deserve to get paid. And that's one of the first qualifiers. The second qualifier we want to make sure is that we have adequate people in place to do what we need to do. The fundraising is close. I can't share numbers with you yet, but we're very close to having our first year budget committed, and now we're about to go get it collected and in the bank. We've been very fortunate also in the recruitment of volunteers. Some folks are here right now. I won't embarrass them by introducing them, but there are some folks here that have agreed to volunteer in writing and in editing, and that's going to be very, very important to us because those volunteers are going to be critical, especially in the early stages of getting this going. So it's going to come down to money and people.
Yeah, and I really do want to address kind of the nonprofit of it all. A lot of times when we come out to communities and talk about this model, people kind of hesitate when we talk about the nonprofit organization. I just want to be very, very clear. Nonprofit doesn't mean unprofitable. What it means is any money that we do gain in profit, so being very close to our first annual fundraising goal doesn't mean we're going to stop fundraising and going out and trying to get additional dollars. Any additional dollars that we collect gets reinvested directly back into the organization. So think of this as kind of a journalism co-op. You know, it's something that you can all buy into and all receive the benefits for. And if there are people that can't afford to, there we go with that word, subscribe again. People can't afford to support financially. Other people can help lift that burden for them. And it keeps the information completely free for everybody in the community. Information should not cost money. You should not be relegated because you don't have the money to pay for the things that you need to know. And so basically all nonprofit is a tax organizational structure that allows us to also benefit from other services and products and different things at a much, much lower cost than for-profit businesses because we are providing a public service.
I can talk a little bit about this. Sure. In the newspaper industry, there were always these buckets of money that you had to get. There was classified advertising, and usually that was automotive advertising, employment advertising. There were also those lovely inserts that you could dump out. Remember the good old days when you get the Sunday Register? It was about that thick. A lot of that was paid for by those inserts that were put in there. But there was also subscription money. So there was funds that were in different buckets that were required to build an engine that could produce that large product. I used to think when I was the president of the Tribune that I was not necessarily in the journalism business. We were really in the manufacturing and packaging business. And it was scary to me because all of that depended on 10, 11, and 12-year-old kids to get that product delivered. In this world, there are a number of buckets. There's not just one, but there are a number of buckets that will fund our activity. Right now, we're focusing on startup money, and we need startup donations. And that's been the critical focus of our efforts. But that will start to shift relatively soon, actually. We're still going to need those donors. That donor requirement is going to be needed in our budget, but the percentage of revenues that we're going to need at that point will start to diminish because we're going to focus on advertising. That's going to be another larger component going down the road. But then there's also what we're going to call sustaining membership money. And that's where anybody can participate. We'll take $10 to help fund this. And there's going to be places on the website that will show you on how you can get to it, where you can do that. You can go in and give whatever level you're comfortable giving. But those buckets are going to be very important. After a while, we need a little bit of tread under our track and experience. There are foundations and endowment monies that we can go and apply for. There are grant monies that we can go apply for. We've already applied to one, and Doug is going to follow up on that tomorrow, but there's another grant that we're going to apply for relatively soon, and there's a third one that's coming into focus at the end of March. Those places have large sums of money, but we need to be able to have some traction and some experience built up. So those are the places that we're going to need money going forward.
And I really do want to talk about the sustaining donor model because that is also going to be, like I said, kind of the analog for subscriptions. And to invoke the spirit of Sally Struthers, most of you probably know who she is, and to throw a little modern spin on it, for the price of a carton of eggs a month, you could help support your local news ecosystem. So $10 a month isn't a huge payment for anybody, or for the younger folks in the office, a modern cup of coffee. Those are the things that, and those are the things that we're going to be transparent and share about. Like people that donate to us, that allow us to publish their names as supporters on our website will get that recognition. There are other services and products and things that we're talking about developing in regard to that. So think of it more as the Iowa Public Radio, National Public Radio, Minnesota Public Radio model. It's asking for support if you choose to support us. It's not requiring support to access our content.
Well, we also need volunteers. That's where the slide goes, because we're looking for people who can help us grow the organization. In the early days, the requirement or the need for volunteers is going to be high and great. And so if you know people who are passionate about our community and that want and maybe have time to donate to a cause that can provide news and good journalism, send them our way. You know, anybody can volunteer. We're looking for all sorts of folks. We're especially looking for folks right now that can help us administratively. I'm retired. Charlie's a volunteer. We're all volunteers at this point. And there's only so much energy that I have, so we're trying to find some people that can get into the middle of this right now and then grow with the organization. So if you know a journalist out there that may want to come back to Ames and make a huge difference in our community and grow into an opportunity, this is the place to do it. So if you know somebody who's passionate about this stuff, works well with others, you know, is a good little puppy, would be happy to take instruction from people. There's a lot of really great ideas. Just ask us, we'll tell you. We've got lots of great ideas, but we need energy and we need talent, and so that's what we're looking for.
And to expand upon that too, we're not just looking for writers. We're looking for administrative folks. We're looking for operations people. We're looking for, so you might not think that you're a journalist and can't contribute, but we're looking for all skill sets. Like, this is a business, so we need business people as well. And quite honestly, the business component is the path to sustainability.
This is basically the profile, and you can probably read that better than I can, Charlie. So
sure. It's basically, we're just looking for people that share in our mission of providing quality news to our community, whether you're a journalist or not, you just believe in the process. Willing to invest the time, effort, and energy into building the organization towards sustainability. Possess applied skills to help meet our goals, content, operations, fundraising, technology. Might not need to be an excellent communicator. Sometimes we even struggle with it. Dirty little secret about journalists is we're the worst communicators in the world. But you do need to be collaborative. Like, part of this is gonna, like, no, Al doesn't have all of the answers, I don't have all of the answers, Doug doesn't have all of the answers. All of this has been built off of a lot of discussion, a lot of collaboration, a lot of interaction, trying things that work, trying things that don't work. So, and then ultimately at the end of the day, if you want to make your community better, we want to work with you.
Next slide. Here are the next steps. We've got some work to do, obviously, and I think you could probably go right to the next slide,
Yep.
Doug, if you don't mind. We will have time, if you want, to ask questions. I have no idea how long you all want to stick around, but we do have a slide that will show you, go to the next slide, Doug, please, that will give you some QR codes. That I have some cards that I'd be happy to give anybody who wants one that have these on it.
And we are sharing the slide deck with the organizers, so anybody that wants it can contact the organizers and get a copy of that. You can also go to midiowacommunitynews.org. There's a copy of the slide deck on that. So don't feel that you have to do it right now, but yeah. And these are really kind of in the order of operations for us. For the community level is we really do need volunteers. But subscriptions to a newsletter that hasn't published yet is our next best ask. And if you can promote or tell people about us and get them to subscribe to our newsletter, even before we start publishing the newsletter, we're going to start sending out kind of monthly updates to let the community know where we are in the launch process. Like Al said, it's not a matter of if, it's when, and we feel like maybe we can kind of bring you along on that last final countdown before we hit the go button.
You can go to the next slide, Doug. Thank you. And here's that website. We're basically at the end of our slideshow, so we're basically giving you our last pitch, that we do want your help. We would appreciate anyone who wants to volunteer. We certainly would welcome your funds, however big or however small. And we welcome your questions too. You can send questions. I'm happy to take them. I think we can get, we can take a little bit of time right now, but I'd also be willing to give anybody my phone number or my email address. I know Charlie and Doug would do the same thing. We're kind of in this together. We're kind of collaborating together to get it started and organized and then up and running, and then hopefully sustain it over time. So thank you very much for having us. We're very grateful for your attention, and we welcome you.
You know, I've been hearing about these meetings from both Carolyn and Ann Campbell, and it's been so exciting to hear about it, that this is really something that it's almost unbelievable that it's actually going to happen. So thank you so much for being here with us today, talking to us about it, what we can do. I hope there will be people involved. I am married to a retired journalist, so I'll be talking to him. See if he can, I think he's looking for things to do. I don't know if he thinks that, but I do. I would like to end with just a personal story about the last couple of weeks, because I'm going to say they have been kind of tough. In 2007, I was the floor manager for the bill to add sexual orientation and gender identity to the Iowa Civil Rights Code. And as I have said many times in the past couple of weeks, it was the proudest moment of my legislative career to be able to do that. We are the first state, thank you so much. We are the first state to ever take rights away from a protected class, and I couldn't find anything that's more embarrassing or more sad. But what is enriching to me is that in that process of going through all this, I have found my community and my district to be such a supportive community and district. On Thursday, I mean, very few people write snail mail, but I got 3, and this got to be the first time in my legislative career, 3 thank yous via snail mail. And those things mean so very much, and I got to thank Barb Villat, because I know she's behind writing so many things. And Barb deserves, I don't see her here, but she deserves so much attention. She's worked at electing Democrats. She's done so much work, and there she is, way back there. So I just want to say thank you so much, because it's good to know that we have people behind us. It's good to know that we're not out there on an island speaking crazy talk, even though there are only 33 Democrats in the Iowa House of 100 members. So thank you very much. I want to conclude with another Ted Lasso quote, and you should all go watch this if you haven't watched it, because it does really kind of bring your blood pressure down. He says, "You say impossible, but all I hear is, I'm possible." So thank you again for coming, and have a great, Susie has more petitions, and if you want to take them to your FACs, to your book clubs, to any of the groups that you go to, and get people to sign on to her petition, please get them from Susie. Thank you.